Beautiful Monday morning here in Tucson before things start to become oven-like in the afternoon. But I get a chance today to speak to a guy who has been burning artistically and creatively for probably the last 70 years or more. He just continues to inspire on so many different levels, and a lot of music is cumulative in its results. And what I mean by that is my guest has done stuff in the late 70s or the mid 80s that when you're digging through a record store, you can find this stuff, and then you wind up being able to have a wonderful dinner with your daughters listening in the background to some of this music. And you know, who knows when what the artist thinks about when they made the record at the time, if it didn't really have much of an impact, or maybe they just thought it went into the dustbin of life, and then it comes back 20 or 30 years later and it helps families stay together and it brings happiness and peace to people, which at the end of the day is really what a musician's job is all about. Roger Kellaway, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Pleasure to be here, Jake.
It's an honor to talk to you again, my brother. Can you just talk a little bit to the audience about your recent... I talked to you a few weeks ago and you had a performance coming up, and I wanted you to talk about who it was with and how it went.
It went well. It was on July 3rd. It was in Ojai at Libby Bowl, and it was basically a pre-4th of July evening. And the reason it's on the 3rd is because the 4th is all parades and, all that kind of stuff. But it was a performance of my multimedia show called Visions of America, which I put together originally in 2008 with my partner Joseph Sohm, who is probably the premier photographer of America.
Wow.
He's just amazing. And we have watched him go from stills to motion, because we have video in each of our performances. We've watched stills in the early days to motion, and now he uses drones. So the stuff,
it's spectacular. Three-dimensional stuff.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. So, and the other thing that was different in this particular performance on July 3rd is my symphonic score had been digitized and put into the video. So there were only two people on stage, myself and the singer. And the singer is B. Valentine. She lives in Texas, and she is absolutely wonderful. So that's what we've been working on. This took a concentrated effort of probably 7 months.
What did you think of the? It's so great because number one, I still remember so fondly going to your house in Ojai, and I've been since that time. Some of my favorite bands have wound up playing at the Libby Bowl, and it is such an awesome venue for a certain type of music. I wonder about you were playing that sort of amphitheater band shell kind of place?
Yes.
How, in your mind, did you feel like, you're not an in-ear monitor guy. You want the environmental sounds. Is that right? You didn't...
Yes.
Can you talk about why it's important? I remember Bernard Purdy told me, with drummers especially, he goes, I don't understand why they wear in-ear monitors, drummers, because the minute that you put those in, you're listening to yourself, and then you're automatically behind the beat. But you just come from that generation, Roger, of not just experimentation, but the idea of saying, oh, wait a minute, those environmental sounds, that stuff is part of the music itself. And I just kind of wanted you to talk about your philosophy about that, and then also how that played into this recent concert at the Libby Bowl, because that place has a lot of reflection going on everywhere.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we use regular monitors. I won't use earbuds.
No.
I remember a concert I was at. It was in Portland, Oregon. Oregon, and it was a Herbie Hancock concert, and I went with a friend of mine, and I noticed that there were no monitors, and that was the beginning of earbuds. Now, I thought about this.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if you have earbuds, you have to hear everybody else in the band plus yourself.
Exactly.
That's a lot of stuff going into your ear. I don't want that. I got to have it in a monitor because I got to have some space between my body and what I'm hearing in terms of the rest of the band and my own instrument. It just scares me to hear all that, to think that someone needs to hear. Well,
no, but I mean, this is a really legitimate issue because I see bands that, I mean, this is I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I see bands, and I'm not talking about what me and you consider jazz. This is more like in a jam scene kind of thing. Drummers are wearing earphones on stage. Like they don't want any environmental sound because it's going to throw them off because they're so uptight about their sound. And I just remember a story about, I'm not going to mention names, but there was this very successful cover band that was playing the Red Rocks, and the drummer was having a hissy fit because, the mixing was off or the stage mix was off, and they were playing with a guest named Branford Marsalis, and the drummer was just so out of control. He was the leader of the band, and then at intermission, Branford looked at one of the band members. He goes, "What's the problem here?" And the band member said, he's like, "Well, so-and-so is really uptight. He can't hear himself, and the mix is all off." And Branford just looked at him. He goes, "Man, you have to play through that. Play through it. Like everything sounds, trust yourself. Trust your sound. Stop obsessing about your sound and play through all that stuff." And I just wanted you to talk, because, I mean, at the core, I'm sorry, you definitely, I know you want to have a good mix. But at the end of the day, if a drummer, for instance, is so hung up on making sure that they can hear themselves, then they're going to drag. The music's going to drag. Because you're just focused. Anyway, you can riff on that any way you want.
Well, for one thing, it impedes being part of the band.
Right.
If you're so hung up on not being happy with your sound.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Yeah, you can't be part of the band. And that's what Branford is saying. You got to play through it. Now, for instance, in this concert on July 3rd,
yeah,
there were 3 acts. And the first act, and I'm talking about, monitors being put up.
Yeah, sure.
So monitors are there for the first act. Now, the second act is so big because it's a community concert band that the monitors have to be taken down and then put up again. And at the end of the band, they had to be taken down again and put up for our show, which was the third act. Now, what you're counting on the sound engineer remembering what the settings were from yesterday, because essentially each time he puts the monitors out, we're not starting from all over again, but we're pretty close to it.
That's right.
So you got to go. I tried to get 2 monitors for this particular gig because, and I never asked for this before, but I thought because the orchestra is digitized and it's inside the video, that should be 1 monitor, and I shouldn't have to have my sound be on top of that, because there are things in the digitized version that I need to hear as cues because there's no conductor.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer I got was no. I said, I emailed you a week ago. And he said, yeah, I got your email. It was such a stupid question, I never responded.
Are you kidding me? Oh my God! Okay. I mean, I don't, dude. And here you are, grandmaster, taking this flack, man. I mean, I'm not trying to say you're above you. That's not even who you are. It's just the point is that it wasn't an unreasonable request. It's something he didn't have. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to do it.
Well, the truth. Yes. The truth of the matter is, this is a person that I asked to do something about changing the patterns that he already has.
The habitual patterns, right?
And
right.
He said no.
Right. That's right. You nailed it. Habits are hard to break, right? You know?
Yeah. So...
So anyway, you explain how you overcame that. You overcame that. Explain your mentality. Yeah. Because you know what? You could have been just like, that could have ruined that gig. But how did you pull out of it? How did you rise above?
Well, you have to rise above it because somehow this guy and I have to be friends. You know, I don't want to sabotage in the middle of this whole thing.
That's right.
So I spent some time in the next few hours just sort of getting more friendly with him and just letting him know, okay, you're not going to give me the second monitor, and I'm going to go with what you're going to give me. So let's talk about that and get the balances right. So, it's like the old days. So that's what I did. So I would get the best sound from the monitor and I could do my job. First of all, this was an interesting concert because I decided to play a synthesizer instead of a regular piano.
Oh, my God. I would have loved to have seen that.
Well, we have a wonderful pianist in town. He and I are the only jazz pianists.
Who is he?
I know. His name is Jim Kellaway.
Yeah, I know that name.
He plays essentially everything, all the shows, and he does pit stuff and can conduct. And anyway, he had a couple of Korgs. And so I went over to his house, and he said, look, you can have one of my Korgs. So not only did he let me have a Korg, but he set it all up on stage.
Oh, and so sweet.
A wonderful guy. So what was interesting about doing that is there were people at the concert that heard the symphonic version last January, and in the symphonic January concert, the piano actually wasn't mic'd.
Wow.
And the reason the piano wasn't mic'd is because they don't do that. They think it's like a piano concerto.
That's right.
Yeah, but I got bass and drums.
Absolutely. Come on. You need some of that. Yeah.
You're going to lose the piano.
Absolutely.
So the people that came for the 3rd of July were much happier because they were actually able to hear every single note.
Exactly. No, you had more sonic thump going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had one person that said months ago, are you going to play more than one song?
So they could not hear you play at all. Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is that there's only one major jazz-oriented piece in this 20-minute presentation. We cut down 20 minutes from an hour. And these people were not getting that, first of all, every single note that comes out that they hear, I wrote, and they're not getting that I'm playing, we have Clint Eastwood doing narrations, and I'm playing under him, and all of that. But anyway, on the 3rd of July, they got to hear that because of the Korg. So they're all happy, and
it would have been fascinating. Because I know that. I mean, I would have been up dancing, by the way, right at the front of the stage. I'm sure people would have taken me out of there, but it's a huge amount of seating area that goes up at that amphitheater, And I can imagine how disappointing it would have been to have you completely washed out of any mix with no ability to hear the piano last year.
Yeah.
So I know, I mean,
yes.
this is a tedious. I wanted to go back for a minute and ask you this because I've just been very fascinated. I did another interview with Sly and the Family Stone's original drummer, Greg Orico, and their first recordings were in '67, in CBS Studios in New York. And, I wanted you to even go back to whatever flashes in your head, but I am so fixated on this older methodology of engineers and really the reliance on the musicians' ears themselves, where you'd get the musicians in a room, and before you wouldn't mic the room first. You'd get the musicians in the room, and then if you needed a little bit more bass, maybe you'd move the mic over. Maybe you just drop one mic in the middle of the session, and that's what it was. The point is, this is what I want Roger Kellaway to talk about. An early experience in the recording studio as a leader or an accompanist, when you recognize that the room sound, that there is such a thing as good leakage, that there is such a thing as...
Oh, absolutely.
And I want you to, if there's something that flashes in your head, because what I cannot handle modern recording techniques where everything's out of phase, everything is closed mic'd, and there's just so much sterility, and I'm just, for some reason, I just want you to riff on it.
Everything's isolation booths.
It's
satellites, if you want to call them that.
And and so we get all this sophisticated technology that's quote unquote make it easier to record, and the music sounds
Supposedly.
worse. Right.
Yeah.
You can riff on that anyway. I don't know if you were in the studio. Go ahead.
Number one, you don't get to play with anybody.
Exactly. That's the point.
Because the only way you can hear anybody else is through earphones.
Oh, Jesus.
So, yes, I grew up in studios playing with everybody. And I can think back to, I can go back to the 60s.
Please.
Where we were still doing 2-track. When I did in 67, I joined Bobby Darin, and we did, he gave me Dr. Dolittle. And so we did Bobby Darin Sings Dr. Dolittle. Now, that was recorded in the old Western studio out here in L.A., which became Ocean Way. And that was done on 4-track, which meant that you had 35-piece orchestra. And by the way, no isolation, no baffles.
Are you kidding me? This is perfect.
So.
This is no drum booth, no baffles.
No, the drums are in the room.
Yeah, right.
The bass.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a certain, at that time, before the rooms had not been, nobody had even thought about digitizing the rooms yet.
Right.
So there was a little bit of decay, and that was used. And
this is important. Explain the decay. Yeah, how was the decay? That is so important. What do you mean? How was the decay used within the recording itself?
Well, I'm not an engineer, so I don't think
I know. I'm sorry. I put too many hats on.
But it's going to be there anyway.
Right.
Because those rooms had decay. Granted, we had the piano bass drums were in one back corner, and the strings were in another back corner, and then all the horns and percussion were in another. But in 4-track, if Bobby didn't like any of his vocal, he had to replace it. You couldn't go to another track because you only had one track. It's so insane.
You had to nail it. If you wanted to put other stuff and layer it on, you had to make sure that what you had already was good.
Yeah.
That is so brilliant.
And of course, Bobby was isolated. They did have isolation booths then because he put on his vocals after everything was was recorded, he did it again.
Right.
Okay, and another example of that is in 1972, I produced Carmen McRae's album, I Am Music. And that was done next door at United, Studio B. And Studio B had a 3-second decay. And we didn't have a big budget, so we had 10 strings and rhythm. And all the rhythm was in the room together, including drums. So, and that was, let's see, was that 4? Well, it had to be 4-track.
It is such an. I'm going to just first of all, it says 1975. Bob Cato, but this is the best. John Gianelli, Lustgarten,
Yes.
John Guerin, Grusin plays a few tracks. Budemer, there's Roger, a couple of tracks produced by Roger. Amels on it. George Butler was the producer.
Yeah.
But yeah, they probably had gotten to.
There, but yes,
Of course not.
He was the
Of course not.
executive producer.
It was a Blue Note, right? Yeah, no, of course. That was West Coast.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was a Blue Note recording, and it was the first song that I did with the Bergmans. I wrote this piece for Carmen, and they wrote the lyric and called it "I Have the Feeling I've Been Here Before."
Wow.
And of course, Carmen was isolated.
Oh, there we go, right there.
But the rest of the band was not.
I just want to tell you for the record on Discogs, which is not the end-all, be-all, it says, I have the feeling I've been here before. A. Bergman, M. Bergman, R. Kellaway. They left Kellaway, not Kellaway, all right? But you are listed as the producer. So you definitely had multi-track at that in 75 by then. But you didn't have to use it, though.
No, I didn't have it in 72. It wasn't a track yet.
All right, so it was released in 75, but you're saying that it was cut in 72.
It was.
Okay.
Well, wait a second. I wrote, there's a whole bunch of confusion between when I think I actually did the sessions and when they were actually released.
Well, this is we need to clear this up while you're here because honestly, not just this interview, but I believe you 100%. It was also a long time ago, but also by the time Blue Note, I mean, let's be honest, George Butler he got credit as executive producer. He was pretty much AWOL from every session on the West Coast. So it's really hard to know. You think that this was in the can for 3 years because it says release date 75.
Yeah. Well, I can't actually remember if we'd actually moved on to 8-track yet.
Right.
I can tell you that I have the feeling I've been here before because I only had a budget for 10 strings. On that particular chart, I wrote left and right stereo string quintets.
Oh, man.
And that's the first and last time I will ever do that.
Why?
What a mind game. Which note goes where? How do you balance the two? Anyway, I'm proud of the outcome, but...
I cannot wait to. I'm not hip to this album. I cannot wait to listen.
Maybe that was a multi-track.
I mean, all I'm going to say is what Greg Orico said from Sly was that there were in 67, and even 70. So even if it was 72 or 75, it's irrelevant when this album was made. But within if you were lucky in 67, you would run into a 4-track, and then within a half a year after that, you really went to 16 or 24. Like it got real, and then it was just a matter of, sort of based on your own sort of personal taste, how much you wanted to use that in the recording itself. But I would say by 72, you could have, if you wanted to, you probably had up to 16 tracks, especially at United, at a progressive place like that. But who knows?
Yeah, you could. I don't know. It could have been. I guess we moved really quickly from 4-track to 8-track.
Roger, I'm telling you, man, I was stunned. Greg is spot on, and I was stunned that between 67 and 68, we went from, if you were lucky, you got a 4-track, but mainly 2, to full multi-track by 68, which was pretty amazing. And then, that was Sly Stone, pretty cutting-edge rock music, but, that was, I really have to ask you this because, like I said in my intro, with Roger Kellaway, there's just all these gems of things that occur along the way, mainly because you dig through, you're looking through, all of a sudden there's this Clark Terry album that I've never seen before with Dave Bailey and Kellaway and Bill Crow. But there's this album that I really want you to break down because and as I'm reading the notes now, I recognize that it was done in piecemeal. It was done in pieces. It wasn't the kind of holy grail stuff we talk about. But I just want to say some of your fine, and I know where my heart lies with you, but this has taken over now as one of my favorite albums of all time. The Singers Unlimited, Just in Time, 1977, and it is the Roger Kellaway Cello Quartet, obviously Les Garden, Domenico, Emil, and then Joe Porcaro on
drums. Yes.
Now that was done. Now what I want to say is what is so masterful about this, because now that I'm reading these notes, I realize that the vocals were actually done in Germany, but this group of singers, the arrangements you have done on these tunes is insane. It's some of the hippest, coolest stuff I have ever heard in my life. It's the album, again, a lot of it has to do with the musicians. It swings. But can you just talk about your concept? Because, I mean, these are like, I saw a cat do this really amazing piano player this weekend in Tucson. He did these Gershwin tunes, and he turned them completely inside out, and they swung so freaking hard. And this is from 77, and these tunes are the same way because I know the originals, and this stuff is haunting. So take us through it.
Okay. First of all, when I met Gene Perling for a conversation about this album, 4 of the charts he had already written.
Really?
And what that meant, I mean, you've heard all the modulations that they do. What that meant was I wrote, for those 4, I wrote a chart for each one that surrounded the vocals. Plus, it was my job to write the inner parts that connect key A to key B. In other words, I had to make all the transitions for the modulations within those 4 tunes.
You're talking about vocal. He'd already written vocal charts for these tunes.
Well, yeah, they're all done. But here's the way it was done.
Sure.
First of all, my group was all together. We were at A&M Studios. We were all in the same room. And in the isolation booth was Bonnie Herman. And
really?
Somewhere I have an actual reel-to-reel.
Oh, boy. I knew. See, I am obsessed with this album. I'm obsessed with this album. Wow. You have a reel-to-reel of just some outtakes of it, or the actual album?
Somewhere the actual recordings of just the cello quartet with Bonnie. She does all the guide vocals.
Oh my!
And then they take those masters to Germany and they do all the overdubbing that group did.
I think I know the answer, but explain to me why. Because that is not. In fairness, it is a little bit nuanced, but there's no mention of Bonnie hitting with the instrumentalist. It just says vocal tracks recorded in April. Was the reason that you wanted to have some kind of template for those guys to actually hear what? Why was there a single vocalist on there before you actually put the actual vocals down in Germany?
Well, she's there for the guide track.
It's called a guide track. Thank you. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that term before.
And Gene, took that, and sometimes he made it part of the chart, and other times he would change the vocal colors. But you needed to have Bonnie there, so that because she did a guide track vocally, then she pulled all of the elements that I was creating. It pulled them all together. Plus, she was singing a guide track that was, part of what Gene had created.
Right.
So, because the album is Gene and I, basically.
Well, it makes sense now. Yeah.
There could have been other people in the group that did the guide track.
We have Don Shelton, who I think is.
I know. Do you think we would have picked anybody else?
No.
No.
No. I got to be honest, though. You know what's so cool about this? Because, I've only been just throwing the record on, and obviously I saw all my family here with poor Carl Richards and Kellaway. And so what's so amazing is that, and, it worked to a T because it doesn't sound disconnected. It doesn't, and that guide, so whatever you guys did at A&M in April, translated over beautifully when they added all the vocals in Germany. I mean that.
Yeah. But in the meantime, in the early bits of production, that was part of my job, was to sew those themes musically, so that whatever Gene had created, if he had already created stuff, to make it all work. And it does.
When did you first? When did you first cross paths with Gene? Like what? Because these guys don't. I guess the Singers Unlimited specifically, were they? I feel like I see their records, and they came on the scene maybe not in the same city, but I'm thinking about Kellaway on Prestige from like 60 earlies.
Well, but remember the high-lows.
Yeah.
And later on in the high-lows, Don Sheldon was in that group.
Wow.
So I believe he and Gene Perling together put together the Singers Unlimited concept. I remember, I think I was talking to Bonnie, because I've always liked vocal shakes. What?
Yeah.
And Bonnie said, Gene won't let us do it in the Singers Unlimited. They did it in the high-lows, but that's it. Clark Burroughs used to do it. Oh, I've always loved that kind of thing. So there's always these little inside things. Like, for instance, I can't remember who came up with the idea of Zippity Doodah, but I think it was Gene. And
yeah, that's right.
And I said, Gene, you want the cello quartet and the Singers Unlimited to do an odd time version of Zippity Doodah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry, it kills, man. It's freaking insane. It's so. This is I'm like, because when I got this album, I was like, I don't know. And then, and it wasn't one of those things where it took a while to like listen to it, and then all of a sudden you fell in love with it. It was like immediate. And I think one side is the other thing I wanted to ask you is Stone Ground 7. When did you write that for this album, or had you been playing that for a while, or when did that come to?
Well, first of all, Stone Ground 7. It is a title that comes from my early days with Melanie, and on our Gold album, she wrote Stone Ground Words.
Oh my gosh! Now we're going back.
I had written this, a while ago,
right?
And I had a band, including Joe Porcaro, who wrote books on odd times.
That's Joe P. Man. God, I miss him so much.
I got everybody who can play odd times. So I said, okay, let's do Stone Ground 7. Okay, on Stone Ground 7, in the first I don't know, it's the first 16 bars or something, where, because it's bo-do-da, do-do-dee, bo-da-da, but that's 5, 6, 7. So it's ba-da-ba-da, dee-do-do-da, bo-do-da. So every seventh beat spills over into the next one, the next downbeat. So you can hear Gene, and I don't know who else was singing with him. They get a little behind in the 7.
Right.
And in the second 8, Bonnie joins them and nails it. Even the it was just breathtaking. And imagine, we did it in the studio with only Bonnie.
I know it was so it's you guys were so like there was no you were like the hired, I'm sorry, but like this was the odd time Hall of Fame cats.
Well, yeah, that was
it was so burning. I mean, she had no choice but to hit it. She had no choice but to nail it. Like this was on fire.
Yeah, but
it's still amazing. It's still cool. It still amazes you. Yeah.
I can't think of it as she had no choice. This was Bonnie. And that's how good she was. She just naturally did it.
Right. I freaking love that's the best. Yeah, that's the definition of genius. Yeah. It's sick.
Our mouths are dropped open. It's just, I had a good idea that you could do it, but to actually hear it.
You're saying it was one take?
I doubt it.
It doesn't matter. The point is you got it done.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, the same thing with Zippity Doodah. She did that one, too. So, and that was in 3316, by the way. And I'm not going to go into that.
Dude, no, but it's so great about this album, and I highly recommend it. Steve Allen tune on here. Impossible. Zippity Doodah. Honeysuckle Rose. I mean, you know, that version of, I'm just used to hearing Chet Atkins rip off a country version of that. And, you know.
Well, Gene wanted to do Honeysuckle Rose, and he wanted to do like a quasi-rock kind of an arrangement.
Oh, dude, the whole thing is brilliant.
And I said, you want to do a quasi-rock arrangement of Honeysuckle Rose with the cello quartet and the Singers Unlimited? Really? He said, you got it.
I mean, quasi-rock, I mean, it's not like it's, and you know, it's fair to say that all the cats in the cello quartet, maybe with the exception of Lustgarten, all dipped their toe in the rock scene anyway. So that wasn't like a stretch for you, you know. But yeah, I love. First of all, I just love the idea that nobody was like, oh no, that's because you know what would happen in today's world. Oh, that's not commercial enough. You can't sell that. That won't sell. This was like, no, actually, people need to dig. People need they need to dig this stuff. They need to hear it differently. It's okay to be nonconformist. It's okay to be different. It's okay.
Well, you're right. If this album were done today,
you'd get standard pat versions of the songs.
I'm coming up against because I'm working on music for my new cello group, and to honor my old cello group.
That's right.
And everybody is saying. I'm talking about company people are saying, we love this music. We like what you're doing. We have no idea what to do with it. So they don't know how to market it. But just to go back 54 years to A&M Records, they didn't know how to market it either.
And they still let it go down.
They did.
Because they were banking on the fan bases of the Singers Unlimited, the history of Perling, and then you guys you sold great. The cello quartet had a lot of commercial success, so they were banking on that. I mean, not it wasn't the insane, but the point is they were banking on name recognition. And I was going to ask you actually, if any of these tunes, if you even remember, if any of them actually received any radio play, or if any of them caught on at all, or even if you were you able to even put this out.
Zippity Doo made it into a compilation disc.
Really?
So, and I have the box set of this whole series that the Singers Unlimited did, and of course, every CD has a different arranger. Some of it is Robert Farnon, some of it's Pat Williams,
Wow.
some of it's Art Van Dam. So Hans George Brunner Schreer was letting Gene do whatever he wanted to do. So he just handpicked his arrangers, and that's how I got there. He just. I remember we had a party at some point in Thousand Oaks. Well, it had to be, around 70, because anyway, Gene was there. So I don't remember if the idea of this album came after that or I don't the timing. I'm not sure.
Well, what's cool is that he brought in. I mean, all those guys, great producers, but he brought in Kellaway, the Odd Time Cats. I mean, that to me. Because that is not. It's funny because I don't know if you remember the cover, but it's a metronome, which is really, but it's all in this color spectrum, which just is perfect. And I that leads me into my next, because last night I'm sitting down to dinner with my two daughters, and I have the sealed copy of this record, and I finally crack it open last night, and it really is really moody and deep, and it sort of harkens back to those Tony Bennett, Bill Evans albums, but this was an album you did at McDonald's Studio in 1985 on 2-track with Gene Lees and Roger Kellaway, Leaves on the Water, and there's this tune called My Lonely Place, and I haven't been able to stop listening to that since I heard it last night. It is.
Well, thank you,
man. I'm telling you, this is where the rubber meets the road with Kellaway for me. And I just, Lee's. I for some reason thought he was more of in the production vein, but I didn't realize he was a singer.
Well, he actually had his own variety show in Canada. But so he didn't sing a lot.
Right.
So the thing about Gene Lees is he was an absolute genius at the English language, and his use of words.
He was a wordsmith, yeah.
He was, and I'll tell you about. Did you say My Lonely Place?
My Lonely Place. I cannot stop listening to that.
My Lonely Place is one of the exceptions to the rule in terms of how we wrote together. We wrote 20 songs together. My Lonely Place was lyric first.
Really?
And that's what was different.
Because so normally,
very many times.
Dude, I love your playing on that song. So normally you're saying you would lay down the musical stuff first, and then the vocals would come.
Yeah, most of the writers that I've worked with like music first. The Bergmans like music first.
Right.
Amanda McBroom, I've done 9 songs with her, and several of them have been lyric first. So that's interesting. That only works if the rhythm of the rhyming scheme gives you a pattern that you can work with. Because when I have lyrics sent to me that are sort of in like a free verse,
right?
A lot of folk music is like that. I don't know what to do with it. I mean, it's confusing.
No, I love this because the patterns you're playing on it are so organic, and it works. It really works.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about, what is your, talk about your ability to still through Eslian, all the work that you did back then, EST, all the sort of spiritual foundations that keep you centered in today's world. I mean, you are, and I'm so grateful because that cello quartet, there's nobody else left. And I just want you to talk about.
Well, this one guy.
Yeah, it's you.
The producer. Steve Goldman and I are the only ones left.
I didn't know Goldman was. I might. But so that makes me. Well, my point is, Roger.
There's nobody in the group that's alive.
Right.
Except me. Yeah.
And the
new group is completely new people.
Like, I just kind of wanted you to talk to the audience about the gratitude, how you stay grateful, and what continues to inspire you. Because here's the thing: I was listening back. I'm not sure if you ever worked with Putter Smith before, but
I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, great bass player. And he said, Picasso. He said Picasso was quoted as saying, he's like, inspiration is real, but you got to be working for it to happen, for it to occur. And for so many of my friends nowadays, there's this huge supply and demand issue with incredible musicians, really good field musicians, great, and it's just so insanely hard to get guys gigs. I mean, and that wasn't always the case. There were gigs everywhere, and
that's true.
The studio scene was thriving. I mean, you really could stay focused on the creative art itself, and like you said, A&M didn't know how to market it. But you know what? They probably, this Singers Unlimited thing, it's like, they still went through with the project, and now we're talking about it, 50 years later.
Well, yeah, but Singers Unlimited was all tied up with Hans-Georg Brunner Schwer and was it MPS?
Absolutely,
in
MPS.
Germany.
Yes,
so he let Gene do a whole bunch of stuff.
Absolutely.
The reason the cello quartet happened is because I had a meeting with Herb Alpert, and I brought in about 5 projects, and he said, well, what do you really want to do? I said, I want to do my cello quartet, and I want Steve Goldman to produce it. And he said, go. And they even gave me a 38-piece chamber orchestra for the first track. So that happened because Herb was absolutely for the artist.
Right. Oh, I know. Herb was about the artist, about exposing people to hip music. Obviously, he struck it. But I just wanted you to talk about the thing that comes to mind with you always is being at peace and being grateful. And I just kind of wanted you to talk about those two things in your life and how you keep that at the forefront of your psyche.
Well, probably through meditation, which is...
Yes.
I've been meditating since 1967, and my initiator into transcendental meditation was Paul Horn.
Oh, my God, I miss that guy.
I actually played a few gigs with him.
You did?
But he was playing, alto sax and flute.
Was it at the Renaissance in L.A. or something?
As a matter of fact, no, two places come to mind.
Sure.
I think one was Tucson, but there was also on the west coast of Canada. I think we did a few things. I can't remember the name.
Absolutely, I guarantee you probably was it Vancouver? I definitely.
Yes.
Okay, so Tucson, because that's where he lived out his remaining years, was down in Rio Rico, down here. So Tucson sounds about right to me. The other, that is so beautiful that your regimen of meditation is, what does it look like? 20 minutes in the morning and 20 of breathing? Is it sedentary? Is it sound yoga?
No, it's not it's a mantra.
Okay.
It's a mantra concept, but it's a little complicated. I really only do it once a day, but originally it was transcendental meditation, and the concept is still transcendental meditation, but something like 35 or 36 years ago. Well, it was after 85, because 85 I was in Israel, and something transformed my being about being there, and I started getting heavily into the Kabbalah or the Kabbalah.
Oh, wow.
And I was reading a little book that probably nobody knows about that's called Jewish Meditation. And there was a Rabbi Nachman who suggested a mantra that you might try. And I tried it, and that's the mantra I've used for the last 35 years. So, and to end the story about Israel, I went to a few psychics, and I told them this story about being transformed. I said, I called Georgiana, my wife, from Israel the first night, and I said, I don't know what's happening here, but something is happening to me. And the psychic said, what happened to you is you got reacquainted with past lives that you had as a Jew. And I went, no wonder I'm drawn to. I mean, there's so much about the whole thing about the Torah and all this Jewishness that I just feel drawn to. So I was talking to Jake Ehrenreich about that. He's Jewish.
Yeah.
And we did an album together. And as a gift, he gave me a tallit.
Sure.
And so,
and you look, you would,
my,
I mean, that
my
is
routine
so,
is I wear that tallit.
I love, dude, you're a Kabbalistic, Sufi pianist. I mean, it's unbelievable. Brother Kellaway, I mean, we got more to do. We've just been cooking here for 53 minutes, but, it's thank you so much for your contributions to music. And like I said, what's interesting is I'm staring at this record with Gene Lee's, and it was recorded in July of '85, and I'm just wondering if that was before or after you got connected with your past lives of being Jewish.
85 was the trip to
This said it was
Israel.
It was recorded
with Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh my God!
Frank Foster, Ray Brown, and Mel Lewis.
Oh my God! Are you sure that wasn't
I'll tell you a funny story about that.
Please.
Actually, Mel never shut up. Mel always was talking.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I would kind of, if it was a dinner table for the whole band, I'd kind of find a chair maybe that wasn't, so near where he was, because maybe I didn't feel like talking.
Absolutely.
But when I was in Israel, I sat next to him every night because of his Jewishness. I wanted him to talk. Wow. And I wanted to know everything that he could possibly impart.
I just cannot believe, that is an all-star band. And you're talking about sitting next to Mel Lewis at dinner to soak up all the Judaism. I just love that so much, dude. I love you, Roger. And let's stay in touch, man. It's so good to hear your voice, man.
These interviews are wonderful. There's one imparting comment.
Please.
To go back to where we were.
Yes.
In studios. More blues than the abstract truth.
Oh, yes.
Whole band in the studio for 3 days. Everybody there. The entire rhythm section, all the horns. Bumping with Wes Montgomery. Everybody in the studio at the same time, except the strings were added later.
I love this. Well, you
Sonny
talking about
Rollins.
Oliver Nelson? Oliver Nelson?
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Bumpin' was Don Sebesky.
I did.
Yes, more blues. And Alfie with Sonny Rollins was also Oliver Nelson. And that was everybody in the, these are all Rudy Van Gelder recordings. And whole band in the studio, including Sonny, no isolation booths.
Dude, I'm glad you threw that in there, man. These are the nuggets that fill me up, man. I love that.
Well, you get to play with everybody. I mean, yes, you have to use earphones because many people are, can be 30 feet or 40 feet away from you. But still, the vibe that you feel of the energy of the band, you're within it.
Give me a break. The conversation is still happening. You're not doing it in isolation. That to me is, that makes music almost void. I mean, it's about the conversation, and that is. So I'm going to focus on those 3 albums now and listen to that relentlessly. But yeah, let's stay in touch and please have your wife send along that link, okay?
Yes, she will.
All right. Talk to you
All right,
soon,
take care.
Roger.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.